Merry Christmas. This is David Mirikitani with Weighing In, joined by Mark Ostrander and Grant Turner, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear, like Mark's sharp new red jacket. Guys, Merry Christmas. How's everybody doing?
Doing great, boss.
Marco, ready for the holidays?
Yeah, getting there.
So this was a interesting week. Let's talk first about what just came out yesterday. Northwestern canceled the Midlands because of COVID concerns. I will tell you what happened on my end because I thought this was fascinating. Literally, the St. Louis Sports Commission called me like 15 minutes later, had talked to Mike Moyer about possibly moving it to St. Louis. We would have had to hold it at the Edward Jones Dome, which is the old football stadium, because of hockey and whatever else was going on those days. We went through the pros and cons, thought, anything we can do to keep wrestling going is great. Yeah, I think you guys, all three of us, feel that way about trying to make the sport better. And literally 20 minutes later, I think I'm DMing with GT. We're seeing stuff from Illinois Matman and then Iowa. And it looks like Iowa is going to host it at Extreme Arena, going to call it the Hawkeye Open. I have a couple thoughts. First of all, doesn't surprise me at all that Iowa would be out front of this, considering where they are in the world of wrestling, what they've done with women's wrestling. This tournament's going to have a women's aspect to it, which is great. GT, you and I have been to that Extreme Arena. We've talked about it. I can't remember if it was U23s or U20s. You kind of get mixed up over the summer when you go to so many of those. I know you don't travel that much. I'm just kidding, but that arena is great. And I talked to Luke Eustace this morning about it. He talked about how important that arena is in terms of having warm-up space, in terms of making it a great experience for the athlete, so the athletes can put on a performance. So wherever you want to go with this about Midlands moving and all that stuff, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, kudos to the wrestling community for stepping up and giving out multiple options. I know that, Willie Saylor and Izzy are trying to get something to do with Illinois Matman, creating another tournament at the exact same time. University of Iowa, John Schomburger, Luke Eustace, and the Iowa City Sports Commission stepped up, create the Hawkeye Open. I mean, as a community, we can step up and give out opportunities left and right. And it's really cool to see the community respond that way. If one thing goes down, two or three things pop up. So if you're still able or wanting to compete over the holiday weekends, it's going to be a really awesome opportunity to see what we can produce in a short amount of time. But kudos to those guys and kudos to everybody trying to make something happen where, something that was maybe unavoidable from the wrestling staff perspective, basically the school shutting down, the Midlands University, tournament, whatever.
Certainly was not obviously a Storniolo decision, that kind of stuff. Like you're saying, it's out of their hands. Mark, you're obviously a native Iowa guy. You guys both are, but I think it's pretty exciting. What do you think?
I'm kind of surprised that Iowa's never had an open tournament before. Iowa State has an open. UNI has an open. So, it's kind of neat to see Iowa put their feet in the water and, test it and see what happens. I think it will be a great venue. I think the location's phenomenal. So, they built that complex for events like this. That's why they built it. So they're going to use it. And so that's great there. I think they're going to get a huge outpouring of teams that want to come in and compete in it, which is also big. So it's centrally located. It's a no-brainer. I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I'm a St. Louis guy, but if I'm trying to be rational, I think where St. Louis would beat Coralville is airport, right? Like bigger airport, flights might be cheaper, that kind of stuff for schools that are traveling. And probably the weather's better because we're south, right? I think those two things are sort of undisputable, but I also think it's undisputable that arena is built for wrestling versus putting it in a dome. We were going to do the best we could here, which I still think kudos to Chris Roseman and the Sports Commission for being willing to I guess the word people are using in this pandemic is pivot, and being willing to do what's necessary. And there's a ton of support. I would be ludicrous to say that people in St. Louis love wrestling more than people in Iowa. And like when I was talking to Luke Eustace, I'm like, even if you don't like the Hawks, you like the Cyclones, and either way, that means you still like wrestling. And at the end of the day, those, the red and the black are going to be next to each other, pulling on the rope to bring more events to Iowa. So it'll be super interesting. I know they're inviting all the teams that were supposed to go to Midlands, and then they had talked specifically about maybe getting some red shirts from some schools that are closer, like the University of Missouri, University of Nebraska, that it would be easier for them to get to Iowa than it would be to Chicago. So this is a wait and see. You guys know this. We kind of look a week ahead on the podcast. Next week, we would have been really in the middle of Midlands, which has been fun to talk about. Instead, we'll be previewing Hawkeye Open / Midlands and Scuffle at the same time. Mark and I, GT, that's one of our favorite episodes of the year, previewing and making picks. So more wings for you to win, GT. So let's go.
I want to go like 5 for 5 on like open tournaments this year.
You don't need it, but you're going to win so many wings, you'll be keto. So keto by winning. So
yeah, I love it. Let's go.
All right. So the next thing, and I think we would talk more about this in general, the importance of the portal overall. Like I put down like Evan Wick, Austin DeSanto, Jay Nyerman, Nick Soriano, these guys are making big impacts on their teams and on the team race. Like without Jaden and DeSanto, Iowa doesn't win it last year. Kyle Poly's not ranked in the top 25 without Wick. Michigan moved up from, I think, 5th or 6th to 3rd in the rankings because of Soriano's projected points. But I just want to talk about one person specifically this week because I think it's interesting because I think it's going to have a domino effect. Moses Schwartz went into the portal. We mentioned it, didn't dwell on it, for Northern Colorado. He comes out of the portal and goes to Oklahoma University. And all the Twitter and pictures are at 141. So I had talked directly to the Oklahoma staff who they were saying Demas was struggling to make 41 or didn't want to make it or whatever. So now you've got Demas at 49 and you've got Mitch Moore at 49. Now, Mitch Moore got a concussion in that Jay Navis match where we mentioned after the fact was killing him. But now you basically have 3 guys for 2 weights. You could potentially see a Demas or a Moore go in the portal, and both of those guys are point scorers. I know there's a lot to say about that. I think we're all on the same page. If one of those guys go in, they're going to get picked up immediately. But just want to point that out to people. Next thing I think we should talk about is what happened over the weekend with some of these other wrestlers competing for other countries. So I talked to Kerry McCoy. He took Darian Cruz. I actually talked to Frank Molinaro. He took Valencia. Those guys just qualified for the world team for Puerto Rico and Mexico, respectively. So GT, I talked to somebody about this. You know this probably better than I do. My understanding from this person who I think knows what they're talking about said, once you make a national team for another country, you can't try to make the USA team anymore. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So Anthony Valencia now could never try, or Darian Cruz can no longer try to make, like they can't try to make the Olympics in 24 for USA.
So I want to say, and that there's like a holdout period or something where like, if you decide that you want to wrestle for a different country, let's say for instance, Puerto Rico or Mexico or something like that, you become a part of their national governing body, very much like citizenship. Like then you basically you have to like sit out 2 years of being that representation for that country. So that basically people just don't flip flop all the time. Once again, I would have to, phone a friend.
That's okay. I phoned a friend and they told me the same thing, basically. I think what's really cool though, and this is always interesting, we had this talk about Chamizo before you came on the pod. We have this talk about Michigan with Misic and Miles Amin, that Cliff Keen RTC doing so well, but I remember we were doing the play-by-play in 2019 and Andy Robot said Cliff Keen has more guys qualified for the Olympics than the USA did at one point in time, So Mark, I'll let you go first. I had told you about Valencia when it happened. I'm personally of the belief, I think it's cool just to be able to make the world championships, period. It doesn't matter to me if maybe you're not the best guy in our country, if you can go. If I could, I mean, Japan's a bad example because they're really good at wrestling, but if I could have done that, I probably would have done that. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's what's best for the individual. He wants to keep competing. We're pretty stacked at those weights. I guess my big question mark, what's his brother going to do? That to me is interesting all by itself because Zahid, who's one of the better kids in the United States at 86, is that correct, David?
86, and he's not a kid anymore. He's married, so now he's a man. He's more of a man than
Well, okay. When
me
you
and
get to my
GT are
age,
now.
when you get to me my age, they're all kids. But anyway,
He's married, filing jointly this year. So
Zahid, maybe the second best guy in the country at 86 kilos.
yeah,
And if he can't make the team, he's got to decide, do I want to wrestle in the Worlds? And if he wants to wrestle in the Worlds, he may follow his brother to Mexico and qualify through there. And then, we get to see him at the Worlds. We get to see him at the Olympics, which is what everybody wants to see anyway. The best wrestlers out there competing. So, yeah, I have no problems with it. I'm sure they're all going to be training in the United States because I don't think Mexico has a real strong.
no, they'll be sun-kissed. Yeah, they're
So,
not going.
I mean, yeah. So, yeah, kudos for them going out and doing it. So that's great. I did not know we could phone a friend on this show. I do now, though. I just don't have. I
You
got to
can't
find
use.
some friends
You're
that
not
I-
allowed to use that rotary landline, Mark. That's the difference. So GT, Mark's actually getting good at this podcast thing because he set it up perfectly. Sahid's the perfect example where I think Sahid feels like he's better than Miles Amin, in freestyle, folk style, whatever. Miles Amin represents San Marino, wrestled really well at the 2019 Worlds to qualify. And, what's interesting is you don't think of a person that got beat 10-0 being an Olympic medalist, but that's what happened. He and Taylor are not on the same level. There's no criticism. That guy's the Olympic champion and world runner-up. They're not close. But I think if you're a Zahid, you have to look at that like, am I going to beat my brains out against one of the two best guys in the world, him and Yazdani, or do I qualify? I'll have to beat them both probably to win the Olympic gold medal, but I'm in the tournament and I have a very good chance of medaling this way. I mean,
I think it's, yeah. I mean, once again, you have to be in the bracket in order to win it. So
yes.
if you can't get into the bracket, once again, they have the ability to do that based off of, their family and history to be able to go and wrestle for another federation. But yeah, if you want to have a shot at a world title, you got to be at the world championships. So it's, I don't, belittle those guys for being able to like, hey, I just need an opportunity. Go get your opportunity if you can.
Well, 2 points to that, and then we'll jump over to what I just pulled up on the screen. But and Grant, one of the main reasons we originally added you to the pod, you've done an amazing job with everything, but was your knowledge of international wrestling and of USA wrestling in relevance to international and the freestyle and Greco scene. But I've tried to pay more attention to the world rankings just so that I can hold an intelligent conversation with you. And when you look at the top 25 rankings in a weight class, anywhere from 6 to 10 of them are Russians. And then there's another 3 or 4 of them that were Russians that are wrestling for Belarus or wrestling for Poland or, that have changed citizenship to wrestle. So I get that some people here think this is a bad idea, and to each their own on whether it's good or bad idea, but it's happening, and it's happening in the most successful countries in the world. Like we look at 2024, Jaden or Snyder, or one of them's not going to the Olympics. That happened this year. I told somebody, I said, if you'd have told somebody 3 years ago that Jordan Burroughs wouldn't be on the team, Jaden wouldn't be on the team, Dake would get a bronze, and David Taylor would be the one that won the gold medal, you could have won long odds on that. Because, Taylor hadn't beaten any of those guys at that point. you know, and it shows persistence, but it also shows when they go from 10 weights to 6, really, really good men and women get squeezed out. It's just the nature of the beast. So the collegiate duels are over. Good job by Intermat, which is obviously tied to Rockfin, on posting these results. So I just copied and pasted these over. So we'll just go through it by rounds. I'm not going to get a ton of commentary on all this, but just kind of the rankings were goofy this week, if you're watching, because they normally put the rankings on Wednesday, but the duels didn't get done till Tuesday night. I think Flo was the only one, or Intermat, one of them was the only one that updated their rankings. So rather than do a bunch of those changes, we just chose to concentrate on the matches that will change the rankings or we're close to changing the rankings. And then obviously the rankings will be changed for next week, and that'll be a really good reset going into those two big tournaments. So Mizzou beats Binghamton 33-6. The only match of note there was Rocky Elam beat Dupre. That's interesting later because of Rocky Elam and Dupre's results with Trumbull. VTech Hofstra, no upsets there. Arizona State Hofstra, no upsets there. North Carolina State Binghamton. So Dupre beats Trumbull, which is not an upset, but then we get to the next round. So round 3 here, which was super interesting, was Missouri, NC State. Okay, so dual meet wise, this was a really good meet. NC State wins 6 out of 10 matches with 1 bonus point. Missouri wins 4 matches with no bonus. They don't wrestle Crawford at 33. They don't wrestle Schmidt at 33. They wrestle Connor Brown, who's really good, but is a 25-pounder. The results we highlighted, big win for Mizzou at 25 with Certain beating Camacho. So it's interesting now, they've lost to Virginia Tech and they've lost to NC State. Both times Certain started them out on the winning track. Arini beats Brown. Arini's a St. Louis kid, so shout out to him. Hart beats Jack. Tariq beats Edmond 11-8. A lot of high flying stuff there. Big upset for NC State at 57. Ed Scott, who had a great weekend, because we'll get into his results later. He beats Jake Hughes. O'Toole over Bullard. Heidley brothers over Mako and Kent. Then the swing match, the 2 swing matches are 57 and 97. Scott over Jake Hughes, and Trumbull, who's like 15 spots behind Elam, beats him, and then the other Elam wins. If one of those matches switches, it's 5-5. It's still 16-15 because of the major by Heidley, which would have been super gigantic. It was probably gigantic at that point because you have to assume Mizzou was going to win the last 2 matches. So I think I know you guys picked Iowa and Penn State to win, and I picked 2 crazy teams just to be different. GT, I'll let you go first. I know you know Mizzou really well because you work with them. Let me do this, because you mentioned this as something we'll start to do. Do you believe that NC State is now like a legit top 5, top 6 team after watching how they wrestled against Missouri and Iowa?
I think they've proven to be a very, very good dual team. I think that they stack up pretty well. They're very, they're pretty salty lineup. You have to have a really solid lineup all the way through in order to beat them. But I think where NC State impresses me is on a tournament scoring system. Is all these guys are, really, really, really good. I think, like Tariq Wilson, he's extremely highly rated. The Heidley brothers, extremely high rated. Trumbull, very dangerous, can, kind of be, an up and down type guy, but he could definitely be an AA. I think, Bullard, he borderline, like that 8 through
round of 12
6.
Yeah.
Once again, pretty good. Camacho, another really, really good wrestler. So I think that their tournament, depending upon where they wind up in the brackets, they could be a really good tournament team.
Yeah, I agree. So Mark, let's talk about the specifics. Let's talk about 25, 57, 97. Certain definitely seems to be trending up. JQ seems to be trending down. And, Rocky is just kind of inconsistent because he majored Dupre and then loses to Trumbull. So what are your thoughts just on those 3 matches? Because the rest of them were pretty chalky.
Yeah, this happened a lot this weekend where we saw this happen, and one guy beat somebody, the other guy lost to that guy, and then somebody else beat him. So it's kind of now, all these kids are talented. I mean, and they all have a different style. You know, when we were coaching, when I was coaching, everybody, we could look at a match and say, we're going to have problems with this kid. Well, yeah, but so-and-so beat him by 8. He has a different style than we do. We can beat his style, but the other style is a little tougher to beat. So that's kind of what happened in some of these matches. I'm not going to put North Carolina State as a trophy contender just yet because I think they have 3 solid All-Americans on their team right now. Camacho would be the 4th. I would put him at a half. I think it's just such a tough weight. It's going to be hard for him to be an All-American, but he could do it. But I really looking up and down their lineup, I don't see anybody else that's going to be an All-American. And to get a trophy, you're going to have at least 5 All-Americans unless you're a team that can put 2 in the finals. And I just don't see 2 finalists with the way the national tournament's going to set up this year with the guys that are there. So, yeah, they had a good dual team though.
If I'm making your point, Mark, then I just agree with it. If I'm making GT's point that maybe they're better, this would be my argument. Camacho's placed before, he can do it again. Ryan Jack's really dangerous. Tariq Wilson will probably get Sasso, and I don't think they've ever wrestled. He's good at the same stuff Sasso is. Like, he could cradle the cradler. Ed Scott just beat Caleb Young, so he's got to be considered an All-American threat. You know, the thing that would concern me about North Carolina State is Hayden Hidley big enough for 174? That's probably the number one concern I would have. But what's really interesting, they remind me of Missouri. They're probably going to qualify all 10, and all 10 of them are going to probably make at least the round of 16. And that's, on the front and probably the round of 16 or 12 on the back. And then they're going to have to win those hard matches. So anyway, all right. ASU VTech. ASU runs off to a huge lead. They win the first 6 matches. This thing was super chalky. The only upset was Michael McGee over Corbin Myers, and it didn't make a difference. Arizona State did not wrestle at heavyweight, Schwartz. So the duels, arguably even, could have been bigger, could have been 26-10 if Schwartz beats Traxler, which he's favored to on paper. So Courtney continues to do really, really good things. I think him having Richie Figs in the room is really good because I know Figs did not want a red shirt, and they convinced him that was the best, and it is for the team, and probably for him. But when you have somebody that good nipping at your heels, it's going to make you better. All right, so the 5th place matches: Central Michigan Binghamton, no upsets; Northern Iowa Hofstra, no upsets. And then we go to day 2. I'm going to move us over here so people can see this. All right, so Cornell, I don't know what just happened. Here we go. Cornell puts it on Northern Iowa. They only lose at 41 and 84. So Cale Happel's starting to wrestle pretty well. But I'll say this first and I'll turn it over to you guys. I think Vito Arujau is probably the second best guy at 125. Okay. Mark and I were texting about this. I get it. Soriano has done a lot. I get it. Glory's really good. And I know it's not the same style, but Vito made the Olympic trial finals. I mean, he was a Pan Am medalist, and he's scoring a truckload of points. Like, you're not going to beat him 3-2. You might beat him 6-5. You might beat him 9-8, but he's going to keep scoring points. GT, you're really familiar with Vito because of all the freestyle. And I was saying freestyle is his best style. I mean, the scary thing is same thing with Yanni, and Yanni's a 2-time national champ. But where would you put, if you were ranking guys, not on criteria, just where you put them, where would you put Vito?
I'd probably put him at 3, just because he hasn't been at 25 the entire season.
Behind Soriano? Is Soriano 2 or is Glory 2?
Glory's 2.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't seen Soriano wrestle yet quite at 125.
Right.
So once again, Vito is now, beat Teskey. He had he's beaten some high level guys. I think, 3 is a proper spot for him until he beats one of the other 2 guys that would have been ranked above him the entire season. Or if Glory loses to somebody else, then I could see Vito becoming the 2. But I'd have him at 3.
So the seeding of that weight will be interesting because Vito and Glory are in the same conference. I'm not going to even say any more guys are going to wrestle each other because guys injury default out, but they're in the same conference. So they both can't win the IWA, and Suriano and Lee are in the Big Ten. So they both can't win that conference. So that'll shake out really interesting. So go to Lehigh, Central Michigan, and Mark, the 2 big not upsets, but 2 sort of matches of note are McGonigal beats Dresden Simon. And then Jordan Wood beats Stencil in overtime. Neither one of those are that significant. The really goofy one too is then Corbin Munson beat Bryant, and then Bryant turns around and beats Max Murin. So Wood and Stencil feel like they're kind of on the same level. So let me pick your brain about this one, Mark. So I highlighted Spencer Lee because he was back and he wrestled. He tech falled, Central Michigan. Jaden Ironman had went undefeated, but didn't wrestle his best this weekend because he beats Dresden Simon 13-12. He beats Jack 7-6. And, the highlights are kind of out there. He was pretty close, if not really close to being defensive pin. The reason why I highlighted Brands and Assad is just to point out Kemmer will not have wrestled in this calendar. Well, in this part of the season. So I guess, Mark, let's say, what are your thoughts on Ironman? Do you still consider him the second best guy at 41?
Yes. And I don't think he wrestled very well, obviously. I think he was down 10-1 or 11-1 to Simons to start the matchup. So he'd got tilted twice for 4. So might have been 10-1 by the time he got out. And then he kind of put on a clinic. So he's able to wrestle in the 3rd period, which is huge.
Yes.
Last year, he seemed to get a little bit tired. Well, he wasn't out there that long. And I think that was kind of a question mark. So his training's been really well. He's got to be ready to go at the beginning. He got down against Jack in the finals of their, the red. So, he came back and won. So, I still think he's the second best kid in the country. I still think he has a good shot at winning it. Yeah. I know everybody think Nick Lee is pretty much unbeatable right now, but I think most people know that Jaden is right there. So I think it's those 2, but Sebastian Rivera looks really, really good so far this year. He's putting up huge numbers. He's teching everybody. I think he's kind of grown into 141 right now. So he's going to be fun to watch. It's just going to be a great weight. It really is. And it was nice to see Spencer back wrestling. And let's give credit. Nelson Brands has wrestled really well at 74. He's very competitive at that weight. So,
he is. But if you take Kemmer out of the rankings, yes. Penn State has more points. I won't say they're the favorite. They just have more points. If you just can do subtraction. So,
without a doubt.
Yeah, and as good as Nelson Brands is, he's not the favorite to finish second in the country. There's no disrespect to that. That's just is what it is. Okay, Penn State beats Northern Iowa. Sort of irony, Teskey beats Penn State. They probably wish they had him or Hildebrandt. And then Brooks beat Keckheisen 3-2, so probably 1 takedown to none. Round 6. So Iowa beats Lehigh. Manzanona beats Murin. Josh Humphrey beats Caleb Young. Those are sort of the upsets. Cassiope beat Wood. So, Iowa gets a little chipped up this weekend. Murin loses a match. Young loses a match. Spencer's back. Doesn't, only wins 4-0. It says major 4-0. I think that's 14-0. I think it has to be.
It was 9-0, David.
Okay. I just copied and pasted it, what they put in there, but I'll change it.
It was 9-0.
All right. So he's back. But then there's no Kemmer. So it kind of makes, but then Penn State, it feels like those leading schools are coming back to the pack as opposed to running away. So, okay. Penn State Cornell was a great duel, but kind of a great duel in a weird way. There's like a bunch of lopsided matches, but sort of equal on both sides. So like Vito wins big, then RBY wins big, then Lee wins big, then Yanni wins big. Dupulian wins a close one. Ramirez wins a close one. I think Chris Foca and Cardenas are worth talking about. GT, I think Foca was a guy that I picked. I think I picked him to do really well at Vegas. Might have been a little early on him, but I've watched him wrestle a lot. I feel like he and Cardenas, and I had, Cornell as my 5th place team, when we did our team picks at the beginning of the year. And I think maybe I need them to do well. So that's why I'm thinking that. But if you go 3-2 with Strachey, you must be doing something pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think those guys, they know how to wrestle and keep it close. I think, even people like Julian Ramirez can be put into that kind of category where they're just hard to score on, or they keep matches tight. Gives themselves an opportunity to win.
For sure. Max Dean beats Cardenas, and I'm guessing like a 1 takedown match as well. So 3rd place match, Cornell beats VTech 18-15. Cornell wins. It's 5-5 though, so it comes down to bonus. So Arujau and Yanni are the difference with a major and a tech. I think Virginia Tech will have to figure. Corbin Myers graduates after this year. Mark, you've kind of dwelled on this a couple times, and then we'll hit the other matches, but Latona goes to 33 next year, right?
I think he should. Yeah. It's just too big of a cut for him right now. So I'm not saying that will be that way at the end of the year. We saw a couple other kids last year really struggle with their weight. One of them's the Minnesota kid. All year long was up and down. You couldn't tell what was going on. And then the coaching staff said he finally started cutting weight as the proper way, eating right. And then he had a great performance. So I'm not saying Latona can have a great performance at the national tournament, but right now, man, when you lose 3 or 4 matches this early in the year, David, it's tough to get yourself back in the groove of what you need to be doing. And it's going to be hard for him. It really is.
Well, he is going to not be seeded really high. Like at this point of the year, if they did the seeds, he would not be high because it was his record is probably, if it's not, it's pretty close to 500. So, that there's a big thing there. So Makai beats Foca in overtime. Makai's now won 2 overtime matches. Now, this is a different Makai than the one that beat Vincenzo pretty handily. I don't know if 74 is maybe a little big for him. I don't know if he's just getting his sea legs underneath him from being hurt last year, but he went overtime with Peyton Mako and he went overtime with Foca. He's a winner, finds a way to win those matches. Probably giving Roby gray hair, but and then GT Low upsets Bolin, and then Traxler beats Fernandez. You coach a lot of those upper weight guys and work out with them a lot. What do you see are there at those last 3 or 4 weights for Cornell and VTech?
I think, you get an opportunity to, all those guys are kind of on that All-American, in my opinion, tier. Like, if any of those guys weren't All-Americans, besides maybe like Lewis.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, they're right in there. I think those guys are, depending upon who gets hot and who has a really good tournament and where they get in the bracket, I could see a lot of those guys being All-Americans for specifically Virginia Tech. Lewis, Bolin, Traxler.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
When Traxler showed a lot of composure in the dual meet with Mizzou, when the duel was on the line and it was at Mizzou, he found a way to win that match. So Mizzou wrestles Lehigh, beats them 26-9. They win 8 out of 10 matches. So, that's awfully impressive. Wood beats Elam 2-1, and then Humphreys sticks JQ. So, again, JQ didn't have the best weekend. I won't let Mark talk about him because he always pronounces his name Jacques. So, and Noah Certain wins again. So, Certain's on the right track. And then here's the 2 final matches. We'll talk about Penn State, Arizona State first. So, really, there's only one, there's sort of three things to talk about here. Bartlett beats Parco, which is really good for Bartlett. Arizona State will drop in the rankings next week because Parco will fall. Max Dean majors Norfleet. Let's talk about those two things. So Mark, you're a Bo Bartlett guy. You know, every time I talk to you about him, you're pretty high on him. You liked him last year in fantasy event. What do you think this does for him getting a win over a Parco?
I think he needed it because I think he's had a couple losses this year that, you know, you really didn't see kids that he should be able to compete with if he wants to be an All-American. So that was a big win for him. I think he's going to continue to get better. I still think he's a 41-pounder, David, and that's the problem. He's just not that big for the weight, and it's hard to wrestle guys that are bigger and stronger and absolutely have talent. It's hard to break through that. So it's going to be hard for him. I don't know if he's going to be, I'm not predicting him to be an All-American this year, but he's going to beat some good kids along the way because he's very talented. So
we both thought he should qualify for the tournament last year and he didn't. He was like one of the snubs when you go to that.
Yep.
So GT, you know, Penn State had this good problem where they had two really good 197-pounders. Max Dean wins the wrestle off. He's been off and running this year. I'll be honest, I didn't know how good he would be at 97 because, you know, he was at 84 and he took second at a weight that was really goofy where Drew Foster wins it, you know, when Miles Martin was a huge favorite that year. Max Dean looks like he's in the title hunt. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, Norfleet is extremely tough. And, you know, to have a major decision over someone of that caliber, like Max Dean's rolling. So if he can keep doing what he's doing, especially like, you know, what he's been doing early in the season, you know, he's going to be a problem come March. And I mean, we can all agree on this. Penn State has a pretty good system.
Their upper weights generally wrestle pretty well at the national tournament.
You know, they do pretty well. I mean, I would say that they're an above average program with above average talent. Their coaching staff is above mediocre. They know how to get the most out of these guys. And I think, you know, once again, he's new to their system, but it seems that they have something rolling with him right now. So
they're a solid B level program. Yeah. B's get degrees, right? So I will just comment on this. I think Arizona State was smart to not wrestle Schwartz against Kirkfleet. I talked to Mark about this just off the air one day. I'm like, if that duel's out of reach, I don't think they'll wrestle him because he can go undefeated and he'll be the number 2 seed at nationals. Maybe 3. Maybe they put Paris ahead of him. But they're going to seed him ahead of Cassiope and ahead of Kirkfleet, assuming they finish in that order, because he'll have winning percentage over them and he'll have conference champion over them. And so that's significant. I think right now that Gable Stevenson is the number 1 most likely guy to win nationals. I mean, I think coming into the year, if Spencer was healthy, that's kind of a 2-way go. And there's a bunch of other guys. Like, I feel like Yanni really separated himself from Sass, so you can go up and down the line. But there's a bunch of weight classes where if the 2 guy beat the 1 guy, it wouldn't shock you. I mean, like Ironman has beaten Lee. Dayton just won a silver medal. You know, I mean, Ryan Deacon's really good. I mean, you can just go up and, I mean, there's been a bunch of guys ranked number 1 at 165. You know, 174's got, you know, is loaded. You know, Brooks is there, but he's wrestled now a 1-point match with Keckheisen. I mean, I feel like Gable's the number 1. Like, if you're doing a most likely list, like ranking them from 10 to 1, he's your most likely. So Arizona State probably, in my opinion, smartly did that. So anyway, probably the most interesting duel was Iowa, North Carolina State. So Iowa wins the first 3, 65 in the last 2. So they win 6 out of 10 matches. So I highlighted a couple things. Spencer Lee beats Camacho, but only by decision. So that's interesting. Jaden Ironman beats Ryan Jack, and as we talked about, was really close to being defensive pinned, which obviously switches the duel to NC State's favor. They don't wrestle Murin at 49. So Tariq beats Seabrecht, which is a good win, but obviously not have been as good if he beaten Murin. Ed Scott headlocks Caleb Young. So that really puts him in the duel. You know, Marinelli wins. Hidley beats Brands, but close. Hidley beats Assad. Warner beats Trumbull. And then Cassiope wins. So it's 6-4 in matches. And that's usually the first thing I look at because, like, okay, if one team won 6 out of 10, they're better. It's really interesting that literally they were 2 points away from winning the duel. You know, because if Ryan Jack wins that match, it's 18-16 NC State. So I will say this, and then I'll let you guys have the last word on it, and we'll say Merry Christmas and sign off. This is why it would be really cool to have a true national duels event. Because, like, if these were the semis, this would be amazing. You know, and then if you had Arizona State, NC State for third, you know, this would be amazing. And if Oklahoma State and Minnesota and Michigan and all these other schools were in here, it would be absolutely fantastic. So we got 4 minutes. I'll give everybody like a minute or two. Marco, who do you want to say Merry Christmas to?
Oh, everybody listening today, my family, my friends, and obviously I didn't call any of my friends today on this podcast. I'm going to do that though next week. And then, you know, the wrestling community in the whole, you know, it's the greatest sport in the United States that we have for unity, for coming together, for fighting. You know, when we're trying to save our sport, you know, when they try to get it out of the Olympics, David, we stepped forward and we're a big part of why they got it back. So the United States was, so, you know, I hope everybody has safe travels, stay safe and get ready for second semester. It's going to be absolutely crazy second semester.
GT.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry Christmas to the USA Wrestling family, all the coaches, federations. Merry Christmas to all the collegiate wrestlers, collegiate coaches, everybody that, you know, follows us and likes kind of what we do. So appreciate all of you guys, and definitely have a Merry Christmas, and looking forward to a really awesome 2022 here shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to save some stuff for next week for New Year's to thank some people, but I do want to say today, I want to thank, I want to say Merry Christmas to all the people you'd suspect, mom and dad, friends, family, everybody like that. But I want to say a special Merry Christmas to Gary Abbott for having us come over. Mark, I want to say Merry Christmas to you because you were the behind the scenes guy for 5 years that helped me with this every week, every Sunday. Your wife probably has a dartboard with my picture on it for a lot of years for taking so much time. So I want to thank Dana too. And GT, I want to say Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for all the stuff you've done to help the podcast is levels up because of you. The events don't happen without you. And, you know, I love wrestling. I love that we have a voice in wrestling that people listen to and watch, and hopefully we're entertaining. I know we have a good time with it. So if nothing else, I enjoy that. And I just thank everybody that watches and listens and sends words of encouragement I get more of that this time of the year. So I just want to thank everybody. And I got to thank Joe Wedra. He's the one that puts our podcast on every week. And he was also the one suggested I'd interview Jameel and gave me some kind of behind the scenes stuff on Jameel yesterday. So if you guys over the holidays want to watch something, Jameel Kelly's an amazing story. Didn't start wrestling until the 9th grade, never made the state finals, didn't win the junior colleges, never D1'd All-American, and is an Olympic silver medalist. So it's never too late to be great. If you are coaching somebody that's down on themselves, it's a pretty cool story. He was very introspective. He was very honest. So I'll say Merry Christmas to Jameel too. Everybody, thank you for watching, listening, and sharing. We'll talk to you all next week.